Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're diving into DBT Core, the partially managed option, and what's included and what's not. Thank you for those that are joining our webinar live. Thank you for those that are watching the webinar recorded. Thank you to our customers, our employees, our partners, our advisors, friends of the firm. Thank you for your support and guidance and direction. Thank you for your partnership, and we look forward to earning your trust of those that we haven't had an opportunity to work with. This webinar is in a series of webinars related to DBT. These webinars can be watched in any order. You can watch one or some or all of these webinars. Each webinar is meant to be seen from a standalone perspective. However, when it comes to this individual topic, when we look at DBT Core, the partially managed, which is today's session, compared to customer managed and fully managed, you may want to view all three of those webinars in order to get the complete picture of what each of those managed options means. And again, if you're not watching this live, we do have these recorded on our social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., for you to rewatch at your convenience. So we think of DBT. DBT is a transformation tool in the ELT ecosystem, but it's a very important component within your overall data stack. From orchestration, so your data platform, your data quality, your data cataloging, DBT is a key pillar that works well with cloud-first data platforms and complements your different data ingestion tool or tools that you are leveraging in order to feed that transformed data that's been prepared for the appropriate analytics tool, dashboard, visualization. And it doesn't matter if it's enterprise or operational type of analytics, along with those folks in your organization, perhaps your data scientist, who need a version of the raw data that is either in its raw native format or has been slightly transformed so that it becomes more meaningful, especially as you look to combine data sets across data sources. DBT comes in a couple of different flavors. You think of DBT Core versus DBT Cloud. DBT Core is where you're leveraging an open source tool. You run that on your VM, public cloud, on premise. You maintain, you manage, you install, you configure, you troubleshoot, you upgrade DBT Core on your own. There are some limitations of DBT Core. You can have one project that contains all of your DBT packages in your code. You can only have one DBT job. It could be your production job. You don't, from an out-of-the-box perspective, have the ability to have multiple projects or have multiple jobs. DBT Cloud, on the other hand, is a SaaS-based platform where you do not have to install, maintain, and manage DBT. DBT as a company does that for you. You get the ability to run multiple projects and run jobs. Those jobs, you could have those jobs separated by development, prod, QA, or whatever number of environments that you have. And you also have the ability to have multiple projects, which is very important, especially in larger enterprises where you have perhaps multiple business units, multiple departments, multiple teams that want to leverage DBT. You don't want to necessarily have all of that code within one overall project. You may have a master project that feeds other projects. So think of that master project being that centralized from a data governance perspective, reusing code. So you have lots of different options. So we look at core versus cloud. It isn't necessarily this is my one option for me. It's core or cloud. There are some nuances and some variation, and that's the core purpose of this webinar and related webinars around DBT. Because if you're to look at just one single factor of, DBT core versus DBT cloud, and you try to put a price tag on it, well, you'd say, DBT core from a subscription cost perspective is very low. And DBT cloud from a cost subscription perspective is very high. Well, that's misleading if that is your default and single way to look at trying to differentiate between core and cloud. I'm Mike Jellin. I've been in the data and analytics space, helping customers for several decades focus on creating value from data and analytics by addressing operational efficiency, driving strategic goals within an organization, all by using data and analytics. And we at AICG, we do everything from strategy to implementation to managed services. We're on lots of different technologies related to data and analytics. And so while the technologies are important, the most important part is really helping you get and drive value by addressing business or organizational use cases. Those use cases can be anywhere from monetizing your data to building net new applications to achieve strategic goals, to looking and helping you reduce operational expenses by consolidating technologies, by being able to move faster on individual projects, and everything in between. And it's really about that partnership. We talked earlier, we're just thanking whether it's our employees, our customers, our partners, all of those folks, those are true partnerships at the end of the day, not transactions. And because they're partnerships, that really leads to providing and driving true business and organizational value. Excuse me. So we talk about DBT core from a partially managed perspective. Last time we talked about customer managed, where you, the customer, manages everything related to DBT core. Here, we look at a partially managed option. If perhaps you don't want to manage everything yourself, from a skill set, organizational directive, time to value. When we think of partially managed, we still have a DBT core server. That's going to be the main backbone. And then naturally, each developer will have their own individual integrated development environment. And so there's some software that needs to be installed and configured on the server and the developer machine. One key piece with the DBT core server and partially managed is that we do not have to worry about installing or configuring Kubernetes containers. We don't have to worry about installing, say, a Jenkins or Apache server service. Instead, all of that comes bundled within DataLakehouse.io's DBT package. So you don't have to configure those, but you still get the benefits of leveraging the capabilities. And we'll talk in a moment as to what some of those capabilities are. And of course, every organization that has a VM should not have that VM completely exposed to the internet, where traffic can come from anywhere and everywhere. You should have a grant list on the server and the developer's IDE. In that grant list, there's a number of different hosts that you will need to make sure are granted. in as much as we have a starting point to what that grant list is, depending upon whether you use Snowflake, Databricks, Redshift, etc., as your data target, you'll need to make sure that those are grant listed, along with, depending upon your Git provider. It's Azure, Bitbucket, etc. And within the partially managed component piece, we see a very simple screen. And this screen is representing on that virtual machine, the server side. You'll have dbt core that you will still need to install, but you also have a data lakehouse server. It's a very lightweight executable that again contains the ability for dbt core for you to call that server from other schedulers outside of the virtual machine within your organization, or you could run this solely with dbt server, with the data lakehouse server, running those jobs that have been scheduled, those multiple jobs, along with the ability to have multiple dbt projects. Still leveraging all the core strengths of dbt, of that push down SQL that you're pushing into Snowflake, Redshift, Databricks, etc., and leveraging the power of those platforms in order to execute those SQL queries. Many organizations that have been in the ETL ecosystem for many years, typically 10, 15, 20 years, dbt and the data lakehouse server complements and integrates seamlessly alongside an Informatica or something similar. Think of DataStage, and can call the data lakehouse server in order to kick off jobs within dbt. And you also have, from a manage perspective, Control M will still be able to see what's happening, what hasn't run. Level 1 help desk can still leverage Control M in order to restart or start a Informatica job. That will, behind the scenes, be kicking off the appropriate dbt job in order to run. With the partially managed option with dbt core, you still get a lot of great benefits. You, of course, get to leverage the power of dbt itself. You get your CI/CD integration. You move to DevOps. You don't have a dbt subscription, and you're not managing Jenkins or Apache in the Kubernetes container that we talked about earlier. And you get those benefits of having the ability to use and run multiple dbt projects. And of course, more importantly, having the ability to have multiple concurrent or more than one job because of you're in a partially managed environment. And so in this partially managed, a con, and this is, your mileage will vary. Some might say, well, this isn't a con. Others will say, yes, I understand. And it really comes down to your organization's policy or ability to use open source software. Some organizations say we have a no open source policy. Others are, we have an open source policy. It needs to go through certain checks and balances. And you, the owner of that open source software, and the owner being, once you download it and put it on the virtual machine, you now have to install, maintain, and support that open source software. You have to, and part of that maintenance is not only troubleshooting, but more importantly, expanding its capabilities and building upon what comes with the open source. So that's an organizational decision. And that fits into your organizational strategic direction around open source as a whole. At the end of the day, this goes back to technology is interesting. What value are you providing to the organization with your data and analytics capabilities? What business or organization problems or opportunities are you attacking? And secondly, how does the technology support that? That's very important for the decision-making process. So as you understand, or maybe you know what your organizational's open source policy is, great. Do you have those skills? Do you have the people? Do the people even have the time to add an open source server along with an IDE for each developer and to maintain that and to build it out and to troubleshoot it? Some organizations are going to say 2 thumbs up. Absolutely. Others will say, that's not where we want to spend our time. We want to go partially managed. Or in our next webinar, we'll talk about a fully managed dbt server option where you are not managing any open source at that point. And naturally, you're going to have questions, whether that's configuration questions, strategic direction questions, what if scenarios, how does dbt or how could dbt core fit into my organization? Reach out to us. We love these conversations, love to help you get going in the right direction, answer those different questions along with some of the strategic what if scenarios that you have in your mind, and really apply that to what is your world and your environment and your needs need to be. Thank you for attending the webinar. Thank you for those that are rewatching this webinar. Feel free to reach out to us through our website, social media, or drop me a line directly. Love to talk with you. Thank you for watching our webinar today. We will catch you on our next webinar.